I generally have been a little surprised by how the recent discussions among the usual suspects seem to be strictly limited to discussing the politically liberal mantras about how the allegedly un-American attitudes of some of the supporters of some of the Tea Party political positions will bring about the death and destruction of the Republican Party. Tonight on PBS, there was a three-way discussion of various predicted long-term effects of our recent activities or inactivities in Washington. The attached video contains only a portion of that three-way discussion, which I think presents a perspective which I found interesting, but I warn you, what follows has been brutally edited to present what I consider interesting and would like to say.
As Washington continues to move almost breathlessly from crisis to crisis, it seems like a good time to take a step back and examine the political history and philosophies that bring us to the brink again and again. Jeffrey Brown has that.
And in those larger terms, just what is it that we're witnessing today in American politics, and what impact does it have on citizens? Stephen Hayward is a visiting scholar in conservative thought and policy at the University of Colorado Boulder. And what do you see happening in terms of political movements such as the Tea Party and attitudes today about government?
The bigger government gets and the more things become politicized and centralized in Washington, the more we're going to have these fundamental clashes over our disagreements, deep disagreements. I think if you take the long view, the way I've been explaining it is this. If you go back 40 years ago and think about the anti-war movement and how it transformed the Democratic Party, the Tea Party is now the Republicans' version of that. And if you think back again to the anti-war movement, a lot of people didn't like their tactics and their disposition, a lot of liberals, but they did tend to agree with a lot of their point of view. And today, the Tea Party, while a lot of people, even in the Republican Party, don't like the Tea Party because it seems to lack prudence, sensible calculation about things, they do agree with their aims, and they do agree that there's something deeply wrong with out-of-control government.
Do you see the result of this as people ready to work together, or more divisions that are ever more polarized?
Well, I think there's two things to think about here. One is we have divided government once again. The voters, God bless them, have a lot of cognitive dissonance, right? I mean, in the last week, what you saw is people who say, I don't like Obamacare, but I don't want the government shut down. I don't want it to be a matter of a budget fight the way it's become. And that's why Republicans lost this approximate battle. But if you look at some of the poll numbers right now, I think they ought to be very worrying for everybody. But I think more worrying ultimately for liberals for this reason. You've seen record high numbers of people who now say, I think 65% in one poll, that government is a threat to their rights. You've seen a long-term trend going back really to the 1960s of the number of people who are saying they have confidence that the federal government will do the right thing, down in 15, 20%, when it used to be in the 50s, up around 60 to 70%. And to the extent that if you're liberal and you believe in political solutions to our social problems or government engagement with our problems, you want the public to have confidence in the federal government's capacities. And so it seems to me that as much as this might have been a train wreck for Republicans, the long-term effect of this might not necessarily play out that way. Yeah, when I hear Eric's idealism in a student, I always applaud it and try and nurture it. But look, I think that, I'm reminded of something James Madison wrote way back in the Federalist Papers. He said that sometimes deliberative wisdom will be conspicuously absent when it is most needed. I think if you pop James Madison down today, he'd say, yep, I recognize this. This is exactly how I thought things would go.
All right, Stephen Hayward.
Again, the major developments of the day. 16 days after it shut down, the U.S. government got back in gear after Congress reached a last-minute budget deal.